iPhone 15 Pro Max has been worth buying, totally worth buying. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you why I've come to love this smartphone right here. So first of all, I went with the natural titanium color option, and this is 256 gigabytes of storage. I definitely like that pick that I made there. I'm pretty happy with it. And by the way, before you say this is a paid review or Apple sent this, there's my order details. I picked this up on September 22nd, 2023. And you could see this thing ran $1321.90 with these ridiculous taxes in my city. But at the same time, you'll see it's an $11.99 phone, and it might be more or less depending on the tax structure and where you're at, but the MSRP of this thing is $11.99. But it's been worth it as a total package, and I'm explaining to you every reason why here. So the first reason is the bezels. Now, if you take a look here, you're not going to notice anything here, but when I zoom in, you'll see just the amount of edge to edge this thing is starting to go. So we're at the point now where there's not much more space. My only dream that I think is going to happen now is maybe the dynamic island one day won't be there. We might see an under display type of Face ID thing. I'm not sure if we'll ever see that, but if we do, I've always dreamed of an iPhone that's all screen. So I can already envision this. So like that, no island, nothing, just full all screen. So that realization is really starting to come closer and closer. And finally, with these reduced bezels, you don't really care at first. You don't really care at first too much, but after you've been using this phone for a little while, you definitely start to notice, man, this is a pretty wide screen, pretty nice bezels. It's just a really nice experience, very immersive. The next reason is the titanium finish on here is actually so clean. My rag has been lonely lately. I don't have to use it too much on this phone, and I barely have to wipe it versus an older iPhone where I had smudges all over the edges of the stainless steel and smudges all over the back of the base models. This phone is absolutely clean in pretty much every respect. The only thing you cannot get rid of is fingerprints on a main screen because you touch that all the time. But Apple has nailed it here. This is, the best here. You could feel on the back. You won't see too much fingerprints. You feel on the edges, and while it can make a little imprint of your finger, you have to look in the right light to see this. Of course, you can still get fingerprints on the camera housing and a little bit on the Apple logo, but seriously, this phone stays super clean pretty much most of the time. I really, really love that. I'm loving that titanium finish just for the clean factor alone. It just stays super clean, especially on the natural titanium. Now, I can't speak on the black one or the blue one. Well, the blue one I could speak on when I talk about my 15 Pro review coming soon, but this natural titanium color really doesn't pick up anything. The next thing I really enjoy is the aspect ratio. Now, I think it's really good for the immersion of watching videos and also just the space on the screen, but the width of the aspect ratio is also pretty darn good for typing. So when you're typing on this phone, the keyboard is wide and everything is just a really wide experience. It's not like overly huge, but it's a good experience to make sure you can read and see everything on screen. And so definitely enjoying the aspect ratio. There are phones that are much more narrow, and I don't really enjoy that as much as I do on the 15 Pro Max, because I'm more of someone who, a power user. I use my phone a lot. I think if you just want more portable, the aspect ratios that are more narrow would probably appease to you more if you're not on your phone heavy, but heavy users would probably like a wider aspect ratio or a phone that feels just a little bit bigger so they can, consume more media and use the phone with a bigger display experience. USB-C has been game changing for me. Now, I don't say that like, I never had it. All my Android phones have USB-C, but I kept having to use Lightning with a USB-C cable everywhere I went. And that's because, the Lightning cable is just proprietary to Apple. I even had a little cord that had multiple different, type of cables on it just to have a Lightning and a USB-C. Most things, including headphones, AirPods, even, the Apple Pencil that just came out, the iPads all have USB-C. Android phones have it. Most headphones are starting to get it. Most chargers, mostly everything. Even cars are putting USB-C. It's becoming the universal standard. And I like that all my products are now working together. It's just making things seamless, and it makes me happy. So USB-C, huge win for the iPhone 15 Pro Max and all the other iPhone 15s as well. Here's that multiple cable I was talking about. I really only bought it for these two right here. Lightning and USB-C, but I will no longer be needing this. I will only need USB-C. And then we got some other older standards right here. These are looking archaic right now. But yeah, that's just been a pretty good thing. Now, the next thing is the weight of this phone has been incredibly balanced. You know, it doesn't feel too heavy at the top or at the bottom. It just feels nice in the hand. Also, the corners are a little bit more smooth, so it doesn't feel like it's digging into your palm as much anymore. This is probably about the best you're going to get it unless Apple goes to a fully rounded corner like we've seen on the iPhone 11 and stuff like that. So this has been very comfortable to hold. Really have been enjoying just the way it feels. Yes, it has a big battery, and yes, this is still far heavier. And if you're looking for the most comfort factor, you still want the smaller 15 Pro or the 15. But overall, even the 15 Plus is a little more comfortable. But for the Max, for the top level iPhone, it's much better than before, while still having enough weight to still feel premium. So it's a premium feeling phone. Although I would argue that the stainless steel's heft and maybe the shininess of it does lend to a slightly more premium feel than this phone here. But in terms of, ergonomic practicality, this phone is a winner. So the next thing I love about this phone and why I think it's worth buying is the display. 120 hertz, 1 to 120 hertz, very bright. Also, the brightness is very noticeable as well. It's not just on a spec sheet. You actually get to take advantage of a lot of brightness. And while this doesn't feel like you can outdo Samsung's extra brightness mode within One UI, this phone still has a very naturally tuned, incredibly crisp and bright display. However, Apple hasn't really upped their pixels per inch in years. I don't think they see the need to do so, but if they ever wanted to improve something, they could make a higher 4K display if they wanted to, but I don't think it's really necessary. Also, if we go right here, you'll see we retain classic features like True Tone Night Shift Dark Mode. The thing is with this phone is that iOS really makes the 120 hertz experience just hum along because Apple has nailed the efficiency, the software, the optimization. So you take a 60 hertz iPhone, which is already very smooth, which is why they can get away with selling a 15 and a 15 Plus with 60 hertz in 2023 because they do a really good job with software. You just take this is like a cherry on top for this phone. Buttery smooth, crispy display, nice aspect ratio. I do have to say though, Dynamic Island is an eyesore for those of you who want an uninterrupted experience. It's still been fantastic, and I really love how dim it gets as well at nighttime. It gets incredibly dim as well, so it doesn't burn your retinas at nighttime. Excellent display here. Okay guys, so the next thing is the battery life. It has been insanely good, especially after the 17.0.3 update. Let's take a look here. These are yesterday's stats here. I charged it up to 97% at 9:15, not even 100%, not even 100. It was 9:15 a.m. I took it off the charge. We were at 11:55 here, 11:55 p.m. That's almost midnight. And yes, I was already half asleep, but I got up to brush my teeth. I went ahead and screenshotted this because I was pretty impressed that I still had a ridiculous 52%. I was on Wi-Fi at the time, but throughout this day, I was on 5G as well. You'll see right here, the screen on time was only active for 4:13, but we had 52%, which means that we probably would get somewhere over 9 hours of screen time. That is ridiculous. You're going to be on your phone screen time for 9 hours in a day? That's a lot. So like I was saying in my review, I'm finishing anywhere from 50 to 65% at the end of the day, depending on how heavy I use this phone. Now, the fact that I was only on 4 hours screen time, I will say I didn't use camera too heavy, but if you use camera heavy, this phone will still make it the day. So the battery life has been superb, and it really makes the 15 Pro Max worth buying even over the smaller iPhone 15 Pro. Also, at first, I had some overheating in this area of the phone specifically, and some people were exaggerating, saying you were burning your hands. I was never burning my hands. The phone got hot. Yes, it was like uncomfortably warm. But was it burning my hands? No. Apple fixed this in 17.0.3. After the update, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is cool as it gets. It's just cool to the touch. And there is a couple of applications I find are still warming this up. So developers, you need to get your acts together and get on those updates for A17 Pro Chip. But until then, most of the stuff I've been using, it stays cool to the touch now. 8 gigs of RAM, Apple A17 Pro Chip, first 3nm mainstream in the world, 17.0.3, it's been solid. So doesn't get really too hot no more. So that's not a concern for me to recommend, to not recommend the phone to you anymore. I think the dynamic island and Face ID experience have really been, overlooked by me even. They definitely set themselves apart. Now, I've been charging a couple of items that I want to watch how long I need to charge, so I'm always setting timers, and I like how I could see it right there. I also like how this dynamic island you could press in when you're listening to music. Also, I like how when you press the flashlight, it now shows up there. The dynamic island is becoming one of those features where you can only get it on iPhone, and at the same time, doesn't mean everybody's going to want it. It's been a pretty good experience, honestly, even if it, cuts in the display. It's cool to use the features. And so while I still want an all-screen display, that's probably not everybody, that's probably just me. This is pretty useful with a lot of the applications that have been taking advantage of it. Now, the next thing is we talked about 120 hertz, but performance has been near perfection on this phone, especially after the updates, and I've been getting app updates. Things have been flawlessly performing on this phone, and you would expect that it's a brand new phone. But I've seen similar experience on iPhone 14 Pro Max. After it got updates, it performs basically flawlessly as well. There's not a lot of phones out there that perform as good as the latest Pro Max devices. So very good here. And while this zoom camera on here is not the longest on a smartphone, not even close, there's phones with much more zoom. They finally have focal lengths that I really, really enjoy. Like the 2x, you have the 5x zoom here on this phone. And with the 5x, it's finally far enough that I feel like I at least have something competitive with the Samsung devices. So I really do like that. It makes it totally worth buying and using the 15 Pro Max. So if you're looking for, a really good zoom camera, but you got to stick with iOS, go with this 15 Pro Max. You're going to be pretty darn happy. You can also go 25 digital, although I don't really like digital zoom because it gets much more noisy. It's still useful if you don't care about the quality of that actual photo. Another thing that has been much better than years past is the 5G and the signal strength on these phones right here. They just have better signal strength than ever before, and we finally dropped 1% in this entire video, but just really good signal strength. Don't have much else to say. No drop calls. Call quality has been solid. It's been a good experience. While I didn't really cover the action button too much in this, why I think it's worth buying, I don't really think this is the selling point. Honestly, action button is a cool, marketing thing to talk about. But the truth is action button, I could take it or leave it. If it was there or not, I would still really like this phone. That's just kind of like an add-on to me. What really sticks this together is the ecosystem. The Apple Watch, the AirPods Pro, the tablet, the Apple TV, the Mac, all this stuff, it just works flawlessly together. And it's really hard once you start using all that stuff to kind of like want to use something else, just because a lot of other products I've tried other ecosystems, they don't always like connect this fast. And while Samsung is right there, they're doing pretty good with this. Not everyone has been a flawless experience. So if any other companies can really hit that as good as Apple's going to do, and maybe they're getting to that point, this is really standing out as probably the top phone in the market, top 1 or 2, 3, the top 3 in the market for sure. So definitely this phone has been totally worth buying, and I think really worth upgrading from something like an 11 Pro Max, a 12 Pro Max. If you have 13 Pro Max and 14 Pro Max, I would consider this a luxury upgrade. Like, you don't need it, but if you just want to have the latest tech and you got the money and it's not hurting your finances, go for it. You're going to be a happy customer as well. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well. And I'll catch you all in the next video. Share your experiences too if you have a 15 Pro or Pro Max. Peace.